Hello class. In this video we're going to talk about extraneous solution, and we're still working with radical equations, so this is just the second part of it. And an extraneous solution basically is an answer that does not work, or it's also called a false solution. Alright, and let me tell you what that means. So let's look at this example. This is a radical equation. Let's go ahead and solve it. And to solve it, what we've discussed before is that first you want to try to isolate the radical. Okay, but this radical is already isolated, so the next step is to try to get rid of it. To get rid of this radical, since it is a square root, what we're going to do is we're going to take the square of that square root, and that will get rid of that radical. But whatever I do on this side, I must do on this side. So what I'm left with on the left hand side is 30 minus x, because that's what's under the radical. And on the right hand side, I'm left with x squared. Now if you look at this, you're like, well, how in the world do I keep solving this? Well, if you look, okay, you have no common, or you have no like terms. So probably the best thing to try to do is try to move all of the terms to one side and set one side equals to 0. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take these two numbers and I'm going to move them to the other side. So I have a positive 30, so I'm going to take a negative 30. Alright? And then I have a negative x, so I'm going to add an x. But whatever I do on this side, I got to do on this side. So it's going to be a minus 30 and a plus x. So on this side, of course, this goes to 0. And on the right hand side, it becomes x squared. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in its standard form, okay, where you have the highest degree. And as you move from left to right, the degree decreases. So this is going to be x squared plus x minus 30. So what we end up with is a quadratic, and it is a trinomial, and we do have a way of evaluating this. Instead of using something like a quadratic formula, we're going to use basically a factoring method. Alright? This will be quicker for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into its factors using a factoring method that we've learned before called a is equals to 1. A is equals to 1. Now, I'm going to look for two numbers. When I multiply them together, I get a negative 30, and when I add them together, I get a 1. But 1 you can't see, but it's there, okay? That's the number B. Anyway, so what are those two numbers? Well, it's going to be a 5 and a 6, and we know that if you multiply 5 and 6, you get a 30, so we have to make one of these negative. Which one do we make negative? So when we multiply them together, we get a negative 30, and when we add them together, we get a positive 1. Well, we're going to make plus 6 and a negative 5, so let's check that out. Negative 5 times 6 is negative 30. 6 minus 5 is 1. Okay? So, of course, our variable is an x, and we're just going to put that here. Alright, so now what we've got is we've got two factors, and now we've got to solve for x. So, to do that, we're going to take each of the factors and set them equal to 0, and then solve for x. So here we've got x minus 5 equals 0. And on this side, I've got x plus 6 equals 0. And let's solve for x. So let's start with this one. Here we're going to add 5 to both sides, okay? And we end up with x is equals to 5. So that's one of our answers. On this side, we're going to end up with negative 6. All right? Let's see. Yeah. Negative 6, negative 6. Okay, this cancels. We get x is equals to negative 6. So that's another answer. Now at this point, you're saying, well, I've got two answers. But sometimes what happens is that only one of these, okay, may be a solution, or sometimes, you know, both of these are a solution, but you got to test it out and see. And to test it, you got to plug each one of these x's back into the original equation. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna start with x when x is equals to 5. Okay, so the equation is 30. Wherever there's an x, I'm gonna put in a 5 equals 5. So here's an x here, an x here, 5 here, and a 5 here. Remember, in the original equation, this was just an x, this was just an x, alright? So let's go ahead and see if this is actually true. So I'm going to solve this side and see what I'm going to get is the square root of 25, because 30 minus 5 is just 25. And on this side is still 5. What's the square root of 25? Well, it is 5, right? So 5 is equals to 5. So this is true, right? It is a true statement. So we say yes, it is an actual solution. Let me write it over here. So it's true, so it's an actual solution. So 5 is an actual solution. Okay? Well, let's try the negative 6. When we try x equals negative 6, we're going to plug that back into the original equation. This would be 30 minus a minus 6, all right, equals negative 6. So let's see what happens here. 30 minus a minus 6 under the radical, this becomes 30 plus 6, square root of 36, correct? Now on this side, this doesn't change. It's still a negative 6, still a negative 6. Well, what's the square root of 36? Well, the square root of 36 is actually 6, right? But on this side, we have a negative 6. So what happens is, this is not true, okay? A negative 6 and a 6 is not, okay? It is a false statement. So the extraneous solution is the 6, all right? So this is an extraneous solution, okay? Thank you.